and welcome to this edition of Eagle's Eye. I'm your host, Dashia Lanai. Thanks for tuning in. I'm joined today with Joe Maggelet, who is the athletics chaplain and the person who's in charge of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes program here at the university. Joe, thank you for joining me today.
It's good to be here.
So what made you want to pursue Christian ministry, and what brought you to Ashland University?
It's an interesting background. I grew up in a large northeastern city, very ethnic oriented. My grandfather came from Naples, Italy. So I was second generation, my mom's first generation. So the whole neighborhood's Italian. And then there was Portuguese and Puerto Ricans and African Americans all surrounding in this neighborhood. And so, but my family had a lot of really bad stuff in it, organized crime, mafia stuff, just bad stuff. My mom was into a lot of bad things. And I remember next door, there was a guy named Mr. Vicarelli. He owned a little corner store. So I'm running around with kids like, Vinny Iovino and Billy DeProfio and Lenny Benedetto and Benny Rosino, and everybody had their own little gang. Like the Italians had a gang, the Portuguese had a gang, the Puerto Ricans had a gang, the African Americans had a gang. So it was a really bad, kind of situation growing up. But Mr. Vicarelli, little corner store, in the big city, major cities, he used to grab my hand, put it on the chopping block, cut a piece of meat off, say, "Look at Giuseppe's a finger," right? And everybody would cuss him out in Italian. And it was kind of a funny thing, but it wasn't funny to me because I wanted to be cut off from my family, because we were the poster children for everything that goes wrong in a family. And I remember when I was 8 years old, I came home, and my mom had taken a whole bottle of sleeping pills. And so she was, said, Joey, help me. So my aunt came over, I walked her, they put her in the hospital. And then the same thing happened when I was 9 years old. When I was 10 years old, I was walking home, and there was the ambulance taking her away. But this time they said, you're not going to live with your mom anymore. They took us away from my mom. Well, my dad lived in Florida, so you can imagine what was going to happen. He comes and gets us, and it is a total culture shock. I go down there, I'm running around, my whole class is black and Puerto Rican, and I get down there, it's all white guys, Bob Jones and Smith. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? It was a big culture shock. Culture shock, like weather-wise, because it was so hot, whatever. And I threw my life into sports. Played basketball, football, all of those things. But I met this kid who acted like he knew God personally. So being the shy person that I am, I asked him about it. And he was the guy, he was an athlete too, who shared with me the good news of the gospel, and that's when I became a Christian. And so when I was finishing high school, because of the bad stuff in my family, I left home when I was 16, and just because of a lot of the bad things that took place. So one of the verses God gave me early on, very quickly, was I'm a father to the fatherless. So I had to learn what it meant to be someone who knew truth and integrity, and I did that mostly through sports. And so that's why sports ministry became one of my passions as I grew up.
Thank you. That's so interesting to hear. I'm happy that you're here now. I see in the open you are the person who's in charge of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. When did FCA start, and what made you want to be a part of it?
Yeah, when I came here, there was one guy. There was really no ministry to athletes here. There was one guy trying to do an FCA, but he was just a volunteer guy. And he had like 5 kids in it. And I realized at that point, since I was a part of the Christian ministry here in the religious life office, I decided there's no sports ministry, so I attempted to try to do sports ministry. So I started it really in about 1989 as I figured out nobody's doing this. And so that's when I began to really try to influence athletes for Christ at that time.
So for FCA, there's a position called huddle leaders. Can you explain to us exactly what that is?
Yeah, in churches, what they do is they send out foreign missionaries. And youth ministry in America does not have the same type of philosophy that athletic ministry has. We see every team here at the university and other universities, they're trying to build their own culture. They're almost like their own nation. That's the way I treat them. So I look at that nation and go, what's their tribal smell? What are they trying to be like? And how can we get leaders and laborers on those teams that can help reach that team? So we see each team as its own separate mission field. So huddle leaders are students who are Christians who want to be trained. They get in our leadership training program. And then they're the ones who lead the Bible studies, pray with the kids, pray with the team. It's all a student-led. We want a student-led type ministry. But they're like the foreign missionary on that team because they're part of that team. And so they go in and do this job. And so we try to have that on every team here, have a huddle leader. That's a person who's dedicated to praying for and reaching that team for Christ.
So recently, the program hosted Baptism Night. What does that mean for the athletes? And can you tell us a little bit of how, what work went into that?
Yeah, so what's happening is huddle leaders are influencing students on those teams. And on those teams, you have students who are like getting, they become Christians or they realize that they really want to walk with Christ. So baptism's a way of just publicly stating, look, I'm a believer now. And so we can do this public profession. Jesus said, go make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, of the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So every semester we do baptisms. And so this semester, 30 athletes came forward. It was about 27 athletes and 3 non-athletes that came forward and wanted to be baptized. So it was an awesome night.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
yeah.
That's amazing. Over the summer, FCA had a missions trip to Lancaster, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what kind of work went into that setting and how it did as a whole?
Yeah, the pastor down there, his name's Art Hennis, and he and I became very good friends, and I used to take students to see him in Dominican Republic. He was over a school and a church in the Dominican Republic, and we became great friends, mainly through basketball. We loved basketball together. And so I would be bringing basketball teams and athletes down there to play ball all over the island. And then we would do like a project. So I always bring somebody with me who knew how to do carpentry and everything. So we would do projects for people. One year we built, get this, we built little homes. Yeah, so we had people dedicate to give a lot of money so we could go buy the lumber and built these little log cabins for people. It was the coolest thing. After the coronavirus, Art Hennis came to the United States, so I just followed him to Lancaster, South Carolina. And he started a church to reach Hispanic and Americans, and so we go down and help them. And we really target like going into schools and then doing whatever the church needs to help the people. So we've done projects in homes, building things for them and fixing things and going in their yards and cleaning their yards out, or brush or whatever. So it's really a service project and a mission at the same time.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody who's a little hesitant about joining a religious group on campus, such as FCA?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's kind of built, I look at it this way. Everybody is not a human being looking for a spiritual experience. They're a spiritual being having a human experience. And so most people live their life in the invisible world. Like you dream, you think. Right now you're thinking, what's the next question I'm going to ask it, right? You're doing most of your stuff here, and that's in the invisible world. So God made us spiritual beings first. And I would say to them, start exploring that. Like ask, is there a God? And who is that God? And what does he want? And what does he want in the internal part of me, which is the biggest part of me, right? That's where love comes from. That's where your personality comes from. That comes all from your heart. And so I think people should pursue that and try to get to know that. And as they ask those questions, they can come to me or to Charles or, to whoever else is in our office that they would, they can get some answers for.
Are there any events that FCA is hosting anytime soon, such as any more mission trips or baptism nights?
Yeah, we'll do a baptism night next semester, and we'll have our missions trip in May as soon as school's out. So we're already recruiting. We already have 55 students signed up to go on the mission trip. So we have a lot of prep work to do for that. And so that's something it's a part of our training also on the mission trip, because we have team leaders and they have to lead a group on the mission trip. So they're responsible for that group. And so this is a big leadership training thing for us also as a part of our whole work and ministry here.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to hear from you again soon.
It was an honor to be with you.
That will be it for this episode of Eagle's Eye. Make sure to follow us across social media at AUTV Ashland. Until next time, I'm Dashia Lanai. Thanks for watching.